Estimating with addition and subtraction. Your learning target today is I can find the estimated and exact answers when adding and subtracting. And you'll know you're successful when you can use rounding to estimate and find the exact answer to a given problem to check for reasonableness. A vocabulary word that we need to know today is the word reasonable. And reasonable is an answer that is close to an exact answer and it makes sense. So when I'm going to ask today if something is reasonable or not, I'm going to estimate or round to find an estimated answer, and then I'm going to find the exact answer to that same problem and see if they are reasonable. See if they make sense and if they're close to each other. If they are reasonable, then that means that they are close. If they are not reasonable, that means it's not going to be close, and then it doesn't make sense. And then I might have to re-look at my problem because I must have made a mistake somewhere. So reasonable is a very important word to know today. So as I said before, what I am going to do today is I'm going to find two answers. I'm going to find the exact answer first, and then later I'm going to find the estimate. And when I find that, I'm going to see if they're reasonable or not. So with finding the exact answer, it is exactly the same as doing the algorithm. So I'm just going to do my problem. So I have 494 plus 216. And so I'm just going to figure that out right now. I'm starting right here where the ones place is. And 4 plus 6 is 10. And then when I go over my tens, I have 1 plus 9 plus 1, which is like 10 plus 1, which is 11. And then I have 1 plus 4 plus 2. And that would be like 5 plus 7. I'm sorry, 5 plus 2, which is 7. So that would make 710. Let's find now my estimate, or my estimated answer. And by doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round to the nearest 100, okay? Rounding to the nearest 100 is a great way to estimate, and a lot of the time that's what we're going to do is just round to the nearest 100. By doing that, I'm going to draw some arrows. Each of my addends has an arrow next to it. So there's 494, and so that arrow means right now, I have to round 494 to the nearest 100. Okay? What would 494 round to? Remember, if I'm going to round to the nearest 100, remember our rounding rules. I'm going to look at my tens place, and I'm going to ask myself, is it 4 or lower, or 5 or higher? It is 5 or higher, right? 9 is higher than 5 or higher. So I'm going to look at my hundreds place, and that's going to go up by 1. So now I'm going to round 494 to 500. I'm going to do the same thing to 216. That's why there's an arrow next to that number. And again, I'm going to look at my tens place, and I'm going to ask myself, is that 4 lower or 5 or higher? And it's 4 or lower this time, right? Because it's a 1. So what happens to my hundreds place? It stays the same. So I have for my estimated problem now, my new problem is 500 plus 200. That's the same thing if I look over to my exact answer, except I rounded my numbers, okay? 494 plus 216, when I estimate, is about 500 plus 200, okay? They estimate to be a similar problem, okay? And they're close to each other. And remember, reasonable, close to the exact. Hopefully we get our answer to be close. So I'm going to add 500 and 200, and that's 700. So are those two numbers, or two sums that we have, are those reasonable? Are they close to each other? Yes. Our exact answer and our estimate are only 10 away from each other. So yes, that is reasonable. Let's try another one. So this time I have a subtraction problem. And again, I'm going to have two answers, right? This one over here is going to be my exact answer. So let's subtract 728 minus 644, the same way we always would. We'll start with our ones, and I'm going to ask myself 8 minus 4. Whoa, is there more on top or more on the floor? Well, thankfully there's more on top. So I can do that problem. 8 minus 4 is 4. And now when I go over to my tens place, is there more on top or more on the floor? There's more on the floor. So I have to go next door and get some more. So I crossed off my 7. That turns into a 6. And now my 2 is a 12. 12 minus 4. Well, 12 minus 2 is 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. It's the same as 12 minus 4. And then we have 6 minus 6, and that's 0. So I don't have to even write anything for that. Next, am I done? No, remember we're estimating too. So now I need to round to the nearest 100. I'm going to do that just like last time. So let's round 728 first. And again, I'm going to look at my tens place and ask myself, in that number, is it 4 or lower or 5 or higher? A 2 is 4 or lower. So what happens to my tens place right here? It stays the same. So I round down to 700. I'm going to just draw my little minus sign because we know it'll be a subtraction problem since we're subtracting right here, right? And then I'm going to round 644. I'm going to look at the what place? The tens place. Excellent. And I'm going to ask myself, what question? Is the tens place 4 lower or 5 or higher? It's 4 lower. So what happens to my hundreds place right here? It stays the same. Nice job. So 700 minus 600. Well, that is 100. So this time I have an 84 for my exact answer, and my estimated answer was 100. Do you think that's reasonable? Are they close to each other? Let's see. If I added 16 to 84, I would get 100. So only 16 away. Yeah, that's reasonable. I would say yes, that makes sense, and that's reasonable. If it was not close to each other, if my answers were like 100 or more away from each other, then that would not be reasonable, and then that would tell me that I made a mistake either with my exact answer or my estimated answer. So thankfully those are reasonable and they make sense. So that's telling me I must have done this correctly with my math when I subtracted both times. So if you're at home, this would be a great place for you to pause your video and then see if you can find the exact answer and the estimated answer by rounding to the nearest 100. Or if you're in class, for your teacher to pause and have you guys try this out together. I'm going to have you pause that right now. Okay. And I am going to figure out our exact answer first. I hope you did that part first as well. So I have 851 plus 137. I'm going to start with my ones place as I always do. And remember, it does not matter if there's more on top or more on the floor when I'm adding, because I can always add 1 to 7, or I can always add 7 to 1. We know that those are the same and it does not matter. So 1 plus 7 is 8, and then 5 plus 3 is 8, and 8 plus 1 is 9. Next, I'm going to find my estimated answer, and I hope that you remembered, kind of as a hint, estimate, sorry. I hope you remembered to draw that arrow for each number, because you know you need to round 851 to the nearest 100. And you have to round 137 to the nearest 100. So I hope that you also, when you rounded, you looked at that tens place and you asked yourself what question. is the tens place? 4 or lower or 5 or higher? That is 5 or higher, right? So what happens to my hundreds place? It goes up by 1 because it's 5 or higher. I always round up then. Okay, 900, okay, plus what is going to be our next number? 137. I'm going to look at my tens place again and ask myself, is it 4 or lower or 5 or higher? It's 4 or lower, so what happens to my hundreds place? It stays the same. And then 900 plus 100 was 1,000. Okay, so let's look at our estimate and our exact answer. We have 988 for our exact, and our estimate was 1,000. Well, those are only 12 away from each other. So, do you think that's reasonable? Yes, that is reasonable. They are very close to each other because, again, they're only 12 away from each other. So, yes, that makes sense, and those are close. So, that means they are reasonable. Nice job today. So remember, your learning target today is I can find the estimated and exact answers when adding and subtracting. And you'll know you're successful when you can use rounding to estimate and find the exact answer to a given problem to check for reasonableness.